In the U.S. today, there are 574 legally recognized indigenous nations. Probably before European colonization in North America, in what is now the U.S. and Canada, there were more than 1,500 nations with traditional territories, their own languages, and distinct cultures. Today, including the nations that exist in Canada, there are some 700 surviving ethnic groups. They are called nations, tribes, peoples, bands, communities, or villages, but they are peoples with ancient traditions that share stories, ways of seeing the world, ways of telling their myths and legends. There are today more than 700 nations that live in exclusion and invisibility. It is difficult, if not impossible, to remember them all. For this reason, we want to focus our interest on 11 native peoples of North America, who are characterized by their resistance and today by their resilience. Their struggle was against the successive destructive attacks, generally genocidal, with which they were displaced from their ancestral lands and relegated to the margins of existence, poverty, and dependency. They were displaced in a bloody and dramatic way, many of them forced to emigrate hundreds or thousands of kilometers without transportation, without means, and without food. In the worst climatic and material conditions, they are the Trail of Tears. The protagonists of the Trail of Tears were the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek or Muskogee, the Seminole, the Apache, the Lakota, the Navajo, the Shawnee, the Cheyenne, the Iroquois, and many others who suffered a similar fate. The cases of the fateful exodus of the Cherokees and the Choctaws are an example with which we will deal in this presentation. The name Trail of Tears is the name given to the forced transfer from their ancestral lands by the U.S. of the Choctaw people in 1831 and of the Cherokees in 1838. As a consequence of this migration, it is estimated that almost 10,000 Cherokees and Choctaws died of hunger, cold, and disease. In the Cherokee language, this event is called Nuna Daul Isonye, which in English could be translated as the road where we cry. The Cherokee deportation was the result of the application of the Treaty of New Echota, an agreement based on the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which forced the exchange of territories of the native peoples in the east for others west of the Mississippi River. This treaty was never accepted by the elected leaders of the tribe, nor by the majority of the Cherokee people. Most of the deaths occurred due to weather conditions, racial harassment of Americans, and inadequate government planning for the food and lodgings needed to carry out the operation. After bringing the Cherokee together, it was the Cherokee Nation itself that had no choice but to organize most of the emigration. The tension between the state of Georgia and the Cherokee Nation led to a crisis due to the discovery of gold near Dahlonega in 1829, which caused a gold rush that led to many people beginning to invade Cherokee lands. So, when Georgia wanted to extend state laws on Cherokee tribal lands, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Cherokees were not a sovereign and independent nation and therefore refused to hear the case. The rapid expansion of the population of the U.S. in the early 19th century produced tensions with Native American tribes located within various states. While state governments did not want to have independent indigenous enclaves within their state borders, indigenous tribes did not want to be relocated or relinquish their identities. With the Pact of 1802, the state of Georgia had given up its claims to the national government for the territories to the west. which later became the states of Alabama and Mississippi. In exchange for these territories, the national government promised that it would finally agree to treaties to relocate all the indigenous tribes located within Georgia, and therefore giving the latter control of all the territory within its borders. However, the Cherokee, whose ancestral tribal lands overlapped the state lines of Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Alabama, refused to move. They established a capital in 1825 in the town of New Echota, near present-day Calhoun, Georgia. In addition, and led by Principal Chief John Ross and Major Ridge, Speaker of the Cherokee National Council, the Cherokee adopted a written constitution on July 26, 1827, declaring the Cherokee Nation a sovereign and independent nation. However, with the re-election of Andrew Jackson in 1832, some of the opponents of the Cherokee removal began to change their stance. Meanwhile, in anticipation of the removal of the Cherokee, the state of Georgia began holding bids to divide Cherokee tribal lands among the Georgians, the white Georgians. The U.S. government proposed to pay the Cherokees $4.5 million to relocate themselves. Naturally, the Cherokee Nation Council rejected the proposal in October 1835. A call to gather Cherokees who were supposed to accept the removal treaty were attended by only 500 Cherokees out of several thousand, and in 1835, only 20 supporters signed and agreed with the Treaty of Cherokee Removal, the so-called Treaty of New Echota. Chief Ross, unsurprisingly, did not sign the treaty. The signatures violated the law of the Cherokee Nation, which had been approved in 1829, since it punished the transfer of Cherokee lands in writing with capital punishment. Not a single Cherokee Council official signed the document. This treaty gave all the Cherokee territory east of the Mississippi River to the Americans. And despite protests from the Cherokee National Council and Chief Ross that the document was a fraud, Congress still ratified the treaty on May 23, 1836, although it was with a single vote majority. For their part, the Choctaws suffered the effects of the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. This was the first deportation treaty to go into effect under the Indian Deportation Act. This treaty ceded about 18,000 square miles of Choctaw Nation in what is now Mississippi in exchange for about 24,000 square miles of Indian Territory, now the state of Oklahoma. After giving up their land, the Choctaw migrated in 3 stages. The first, in the fall of 1831, the second in 1832, and the last the year after. The Treaty of the Dancing Rabbit Creek was ratified by the U.S. Senate on February 25 of 1831, and the President was eager to make it a disposal model. About 15,000 Choctaws left the former Choctaw Nation for Indian Territory, much of the state of Oklahoma today. The word Oklahoma in Choctaw means red people. Estimates from the late 20th century indicate that between 5,000 and 6,000 Choctaw remained in Mississippi in 1831 after the first removal. And over the next 10 years, they were subject to increasing land disputes and harassment and intimidation. The Choctaw described their situation in 1849. We have had our houses torn down and burned, our fences destroyed, cattle in our fields killed, and we ourselves have been flogged, handcuffed, chained, and personally abused, until by such treatment some of our best men have died. The removals continued until the beginning of the 20th century. In 1903, another 300 Mississippi Choctaw were forced to move to Oklahoma. The Choctaw Nation continued to exist until Oklahoma was created as a state. This government was dismantled under the Curtis Act, along with those of other Native American nations in the former Indian Territory, to allow Oklahoma's admission as a state. Native American communal lands were divided up and assigned to individual households. The U.S. declared the common lands remaining after the allotment to be surplus and sold them to the American settlers. In the 20th century, the Choctaw reorganized and were recognized by the government as the Choctaw Nation. The Choctaw descendants who remained in Mississippi reorganized as the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians in 1945 and gained federal recognition. Today, there are approximately 200,000 Choctaws, mainly living in Oklahoma. Meanwhile, the Cherokee Nation remains today as the largest tribe in the U.S., with more than 390,000 tribal citizens worldwide. More than 140,000 Cherokee Nation residents reside within the tribe's reservation boundaries in northeast Oklahoma, in a total area of over 17,000 square kilometers. In the 2010 census, 819,000 people claimed Cherokee ancestry. More than 140,000 Cherokee Nation citizens reside within the tribe's reservation boundaries in northeastern Oklahoma, in a total area of approximately 17,000 square kilometers. And over 810,000 people claimed Cherokee ancestry in the 2010 census, and there is an extended diaspora in the U.S. and worldwide. Ultimately, the Trail of Tears was reproduced with many more Native peoples. In future videos, we will try to describe the chronicles of its resistance through time and up to the present.